Hi everyone, welcome to Olive City Homestead. Kim here, and today's video is the one I promised you on my end of September tour, and that is the pickled peppers recipe. It's super easy, quick, and so delicious. I'm going to give you two different options. You can either do a simple pickling recipe that keeps the peppers nice and fresh and even a bit crunchy in the fridge for about a month. Or you can take just a few extra minutes and give them a simple water bath. Just needs a big pot, no special equipment, no pressure canner necessary. And that water bath takes 15-20 minutes at most, depending what altitude you're at. And those pickled peppers will last over the whole winter. They won't last that long because you guys will eat them because they're so good. So let's go get some peppers. Maybe some other veggies too, because you can pickle just about any veggie you want. All right, it is definitely time to harvest some peppers. Peppers of all varieties, auroras, corbaci, huge cubanelles, more corbaci, and in here we've got Jimmy Nardellos, and over here, finally, I see fatales. They took till fall to finally flower and fruit, but they're here. They're kind of hidden in here, but they're here. Fatales. Jalapenos too, hundreds. But I'm not going to be bringing in hundreds because, well, I don't want to be canning hot ones right now. But I'll put a few in for some spice. And then in here, I've got 3 plants of, let's see, there they are, red snacking peppers. And again, in here, would not surprise me to find hundreds. Another plant here, also full of them. These red snacking peppers, there's more than 100 here. There's probably 200 here. And they're just prolific. I have pulled back the bushes and I just keep finding more and more of them. I think the best way maybe to harvest the whole plant at once and have some green and some red, because they don't snap off too easily, but their stems are kind of short, so they're kind of a pain to get off the plant. That one snapped off easily, but they often don't. They go from small to medium small to, this is about the largest one I found. It's about 2.5–3 inches, but most are 1 inch to 2 inch. But they are really tasty, so, and they do produce a lot. Guess it's worth the harvest if you love peppers. Here we have some Graham Marconis. These things are pretty big. I'd say that one is at least 6 inches. And then over here I've got some sweet shishitos. Those are really good. And this plant's full of poblano anchos. These are hot too, so maybe I'll just do a couple of jars of just hot ones. And the other ones I'll do the regular flavor that most of my kids like. So here are the peppers I harvested today. There is still a ton out there, especially of some of the varieties. These are the fatales, the ones that I had only gotten 1 pepper off back in May and only started fruiting just like 2 weeks ago. They are the only hot ones I brought in today, so I will probably only put them in maybe 3 jars. And then I'm going to do a bunch of hot peppers next week because I do have a ton of jalapenos out there and a bunch of poblano anchos. These are sweet shishitos. These are corbacis that have turned red. These are a ton of green corbacis. These are some Graham Marconis. These are the red snacking peppers that actually, despite their generic name, are quite nice tasting. They're on the sweet side. These are the cubanelles, which taste a lot like a good bell pepper. And then these are Jimmy Nardellos that have all turned. This is the last one that has any hint of green left in it. The green ones, my oldest daughter used to do a lot of cooking with them, but this summer she's been too busy for that, so they've been turning red. So I'm just gonna put them in here with all these other peppers. The jars are just about done being sterilized. That takes 10 minutes. So now I'm just gonna chop these up. I'm not even gonna de-seed them. I'm just gonna chop them up, and I'm gonna get together my basically pickling syrup. It's vinegar, sugar, salt, and any spices I might want to add. Time for the corbachis. Now I'm not so worried about doing this quickly. For one thing, I don't want to chop off a finger, but for another thing, I sort of use it as a meditative time. I'm not in any hurry, in other words. Of course, I'm not really meditating right now because I'm doing a video, but normally. So the thing is that when you do these pickling recipes or canning recipes, you don't need to take out the seeds from the peppers. You can, and if you're dealing with hot peppers, if you leave the seeds in, usually that makes them hotter. You know, I don't think this is actually a corbachi. It looks like a cubanelle that has turned red. That's what I think it is, but it doesn't really matter, does it? Because they're all going in the same place. Once you have the tops off of these, then you can go a lot faster because you're just chopping them in relatively uniform segments, and how big they are is completely up to you. Do you want a big, huge bite or a bunch of little small bites? So I'm gonna go in rings about, I'd say they're about 1/4 of an inch. And that's the size I like. This might take a little longer than you anticipate. At least in my experience, it does, but it's well worth it. And it's not difficult, super simple, and the end result is delicious and lasts for quite a long time. If you pickle them and just put the veggies in the sterilized jars and add the pickling syrup I'm going to tell you about. It's not really a syrup, I just call it that. Then they keep in the fridge for about a month. They don't last that long. People eat them, but they can last that long. And if you want them to last longer, then instead of pre-sterilizing the jars for 10 minutes, you just, wash the jars, put in the peppers, and add your pickling syrup, and then give them a water bath for 15 minutes. Of course, check your altitude, because if you're at a higher altitude, you're going to have to go longer than that. But a water bath for 15 minutes will keep them for you on the shelf over the winter. Bigger peppers go faster. All right, all the chopping is done. The peppers are ready. The pickling syrup is ready. And now I have just chopped up some green onions, some Egyptian walking onions. And again, you can add whatever spice you would like, dill, sage, rosemary. You can add basil. A lot of people like to add garlic or garlic chives, but this time I'm just adding some green onions to the vinegar pickling syrup. And so I'm going to mix these all together and then put them in the jars, leaving just like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of headspace, and then pour the syrup over them. Let's see how it goes. Well, I didn't have a big enough bowl out to put them all together, so I'm going to do it in 2 halves and then sort of mix them together ad hoc. You'll notice I did not put these in. These are the fatale peppers. They're the one hot pepper I brought in. And so what I'm going to do is make a bunch of jars with everything but them, and then I'll leave just a little bit and I'll add those in at the end to a small portion of all of this stuff, and then I'll can a couple of jars that are hot. That fatale pepper plant out there, now that it's finally decided to start producing, is producing tons. So I know that I have plenty more fatales to go with my jalapenos and my poblano anchos to make a bunch of hot ones next week or the week after that. Or the rate these peppers are doing in this weather, I think they're going to keep going into November, because we do stay hot here for quite a long time. So one thing I highly suggest is that you be careful not to touch your eyes or your face or your mouth with your hands if you are using any hot peppers. I'm not really, but I did slice those fatales up, so there could be remnants of that on my hand, so I will be careful. All right, I'm going to finish mixing these up and get them in the jars. They look pretty Christmassy, don't they? Well, we'll just think of them as very festive, very harvest festive. Now I'm pouring the hot syrup I made over the pickles. Pretty simple, isn't it? Now I'm going to put the recipe for this in the description, but it is so simple, I can tell it to you now. It's 2 cups of vinegar, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of kosher salt or pickling salt. Again, leave 1/2 inch to 1 inch of headspace when you're putting the peppers in. And by the way, this goes for any veggies you want to pickle. I frequently pickle zucchini, other squash, carrots, of course cucumbers, but all of those you can use the same recipe for and the same method for. You do want to push those veggies down, in this case peppers, because as you fill the jars, they look like they're full, but they're not really. So do push them down, make more efficient use of your jars. And if you're like me and most people, you'll end up having to make a second batch of the syrup. In fact, guess what? I'm going to end up making a 3rd batch, because you always have more peppers than you think you do. So if you've got peppers at your place, I encourage you to try this recipe, because it really works, it's really simple, and it's really tasty. So here's the end result, guys. Look how gorgeous these are, and I've tried them and they are delicious. So I encourage you, get out there and get all those peppers out of your garden, any zucchini or carrots or cucumbers or eggplant or whatever else you might want to experiment with, and try this recipe, because it works, it's simple, and it tastes great. See you next time, folks.